Heyo! Wouldn't be an MP tutorial if we weren't doing it twice in a row, baby. Woo! Alright. So we're doing Sun and Moon. It's old. It's simple. Why are we doing it then? Because I remember struggling with supersaws, overcomplicating supersaws. Plus there's a really cool reverb trick involved. And there's a lot to learn from this tutorial. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it, motherfucker. So, let's listen to it. That way you know whether you're going to sit through what is probably going to be a 20 to 25 minute extravaganza. And here we go. Oh, this one's going to be me. This one is Above and Beyond. So, pretty close. Reverb and all included. That's one of the highlights of what we're going to be doing here. You will notice there's a difference between the two, and that difference can be found right around this area of the frequency range due to some effects and crashes and rumbles and atmospheric things that are included in my project file because they're not relevant. And I hope my voice just didn't crack, but it definitely did. So, here we go. Let's do a quick walkthrough on all the shit you'll need to get this done. So here's the project file that I'm gonna give you guys the whole reason file. The reverb is made with Ubiqu's ambience processor, which is a algorithmic reverb. Pulsar LFO is used as an LFO, although we can substitute that for Thor. Trident is a high-pass filter. You don't need this to make a high-pass filter. I'm just an asshole. The bass, we're going to go over that in a second, is made with Viking. And then the actual sounds themselves are made with Antidote, the supersaw components. Right on, brother. So, before we jump into this, we're not going to do the bass in this tutorial because it's just so... It's nothing, yo. Like, this is the bass. I don't know if you can even hear that. It's a low-pass triple stack saw. Actually, it's only a duple stack saw, so it's nothing. But it's hugely important in creating the perception of a giant fucking supersaw. And that's maybe worthy of another video, composing EDM-style chords effectively, because a huge piece of the puzzle is the bass. And where does the bass sit in the mix? How bright is the bass? How heavy is the bass? Because bass adds two really important things. First of all, it adds that whole sub-frequency range that does not exist in the normal chords. So if I go to the chords here in the sequencer, they don't have, bass notes. It's all up here. These are not bass notes. So it adds all that weight. And then the second thing that it does is that, especially synthesized bass notes like this, if I pull up our good old spectrum analyzer here, if this were not low pass, you get all these harmonics that spread out across into the upper frequency spectrum, which not only makes things brighter, but it just makes things sound bigger because there's more shit happening now in an area you can hear as well as you can feel. So bass is hugely important. That's just a little tidbit about bass being super duper important. Okay, so let's start making this shit. Let's not drag this out any longer than it has to be. Chia, chia, chia. Here's an empty project file, which has the notes all ready to go. And let's start with the lead. So the main sound I broke up into two components, one being the main supersaw component, that's really the thing that your ear is going to focus on, And then there's a second supersaw component that's more into the background, which I'm not even really sure is necessary, but the reason why I added it in the original project file was because I just felt that one supersaw wasn't doing enough, unfortunately. I like to keep things simple and do as much as you can with as little as you can, but in this case I really thought that you needed another layer of garbage in the background just to give it a little bit more, unfortunately. So that's what we're going to do here. So here's the lead. I like to make my melody stuff blue, because I'm OCD, motherfucker. And we need an antidote. Of course we do. Okay, so here's our antidote. This patch is going to be really, maybe insultingly simple, so I apologize. We're going to use a digital saw waveform because there's nothing analog about what we're doing here. We're stacking 8 digital saw waves on top of each other with a detune of 50%. We're going to spread them out across the frequency spectrum. And then the next most important thing that you do is we go to our silent key filter, which I'm pretty sure I've mentioned in other videos, is our silent 1 filter inside of Reason, such that we can boost the resonance without losing any amplitude gain into or out of the filter. And we're going to jack up the resonance because that's going to create a peak of sorts, or it's going to act as somewhat of a high shelf boost in like the 20 kilohertz range because we're at the top of our filter, and that's going to make the thing sound brighter and more shimmery, etc., etc. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab some noise because humans love white noise. We love it. It makes us go crazy. It's like, there's so much energy, the white noise. It's fucking great. And I don't know why we love it, but we do. So that's what we're going to add in here. We're going to grab 2 voices for our white noise so that when I jack up the stereo spread here, one voice is all the way in the left, one voice is all the way in the right. It's white noise, which means that it's random equal energy amplitude at all frequencies, so it's going to just like spurt out in both of our ear holes. And we're going to add a little, just like the smallest amount of it, just so that you can barely start to hear it at 10%, which is going to jack the whole thing up to another level. Then we're going to go to the EQ section. Another thing which normally I would not do for a whole bunch of reasons, which I'm not going to get into right now. But I think there is I don't really watch YouTube tutorials anymore. But when I used to, there was a whole lot of shit EQ happening everywhere. Like people are boosting this and cutting that and doing all this garbage. And it's just like always unnecessary and stupid. But in this case, you'll notice that we're going to add 5 dB on the high shelf on every sound we make here. And that is most definitely a mastering stage in the actual Above and Beyond track. But in this case right here, just to make them sound the same when we A-B them, I boosted the high shelf here. Probably should have just added it on the master channel, but I didn't. So in the EQ section, I boosted 5 decibels here to make the sound more bright. And that gives it that, oh shit, it's trance in your face kind of deal. A super optional step is we can use the compressor here with retarded compressor settings like this to maintain all the amplitude modulation happening because of our detuned saw waves, which are causing deconstructive and constructive frequency interference. But you don't really have to do that. It's not necessary. You can compress to your taste in your track. So believe it or not, this is our supersaw. And it sounds pretty vanilla, as it should. But there are the whole maybe one of the reasons I'm doing this is to show you that to get a giant sound, you don't need to do giant things. This is super easy. You can we whip this up in 2 minutes. The next layer we're going to do is probably just all garbage and bullshit, but it is going to make it just a little bit more like wide and big and more crap happening. Okay, So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to create a second layer, which I call support here. I'll also color that blue. Look, Reason got new colors. That's great. Right on, Propellerhead. Synapse, audio, antidote. Actually, that's not the first thing we're going to add. My bad, yo. We're actually going to add a 14:2 mixer because we're going to have 2 instances of antidote in here. Because I'm feeling extra crazy right now. And I'm holding shift while I create these, even though I don't think I have to. I think it'll do it automatically. But now they're not connected, so I manually drag them into their designated quarter jack slots, because that's always fun. Alright, so let's create this support layer. So in our first instance of antidote, believe it or not, we're going to add 16 more saw waves. I don't know why. I think I just wanted more crap happening. With like slightly different detune amounts just to differentiate them from what's happening in the previous patch. And I'm going to stereo spread them so that they're all over the place. I can bring this one down a little in the mix because it's kind of an ugly kind of detuning. But I just want it to be like hectic in a sense. Then we're going to also, once again whip out the silent key filter, bump up that resonance, bump up that high shelf, and then you're good to go on this instance of the antidote. We're going to move on to the second instance of antidote here, and this is more noise, more crap. So in the second oscillator slot, oscillator 2, we're going to get noise, spread them across, our old friend 10% over here, and then in the oscillator 1 position, you can use this wavetable glass thing, which are these arranged sinusoids, to kind of give like a bell-esque timbre in the upper end of the frequency spectrum. You can go for that. Move the modifier like over here to arrange the sinusoidal components, and that just gives it that shimmeriness again. I mean, it's all about creating this high-end garbage that makes the whole sound bigger. Then we're going to silent key. We're going to bump up the resonance here just like bam, and then we're actually going to move the cutoff down a little bit so that the white noise peak that we're actually building is in a different spot than all the other white noise peaks that we've built thus far. And of course, we're going to bump up the high shelf so that it hits 5.1, and you'll notice on the mixer I already arranged them, but they are at different amplitudes such that the lead is in front of the support. So just a little something more to keep it funky, keep it fresh. That's all there is to it. We're not going to build the bass here, so let's move on to the reverb. So a cool thing about, not a cool thing about Reason, I'm pretty sure all the DAWs can do this. I know Logic can, I do it in Logic. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually make a mix channel for the reverb, so that it can actually like live on the mixer and not just live on the send effects knob. So to do that, we just create a mix channel, and the reverb that I'm going to be using here is the UE-UBIC-A ambience processor, although the RV7000 works just as well. But there's a preset on here that I'm going to load up, and I'm going to explain why I loaded up. So the preset that we're going to load up here on the reverb is called Fairy Tale. And the reason I loaded up this preset may seem like a cop-out to load up a preset, but I don't really give a shit. The reason I loaded it up is because it's super long, decay time 92%. It lets a lot of high-frequency information come through. And those are pretty much the two deciding factors here. The density here can get bumped up to 100% if you want to make it more diffused, or is it less diffused? I don't remember right now, but it makes it smoother, the reverb, with the density knob up like that. And yeah, the two deciding factors for this reverb are the brightness and the longness. Those are two very defining trance characteristics. So if you're using reverb in your trance songs, you want them to be longer than what's natural, and definitely brighter than what's natural. This is not a natural sounding reverb, this is a trance sounding reverb, and that's why I picked it. We're going to skip the trident here. You see there's a trident on my master chain. We're going to skip it here in the creation of this reverb for you folks that don't have trident, because as I said, now that this reverb lives in a mix channel, we can literally just take, this is our Anjuna reverb. We can literally just bring up our SSL mixer and high pass it, wherever we want. That's a good, this is the default spot for the high pass filter, 187.1 hertz. That's a great spot for a high pass filter to default to, and it's going to shave everything off below 187.1 hertz. And that's that. What we haven't done yet is hook this up, though, in a way such that it actually lives in this mix channel and functions on the send effects board. So we're going to flip the tab around, disconnect these bad boys, and the audio in is actually going to come from the FX send. That's the catch here. The next thing we need to create the sidechain effect is M-class compressor. Yep. And it hooked it up correctly. The audio from the reverb is going into the compressor. The compressor audio is going out into the mix channel. So now the signal goes from here into here, out into here, out into here. And now is the crucial step in which we need something to sidechain this reverb. We need something, so what's happening in the Above and Beyond song? When the reverb is on, when the synth is on, the reverb gets pushed beneath the synth, and when the synth is off, the reverb comes smacking forward to the front of the mix. So I'm going to quickly pull up another song which does this. There are millions that do, but another one that does it in this context is Seven Skies Vision. This song. There are a lot of other uses for this, such as in the track Burns Lies. The vocal here actually compresses the reverb on the vocal, so that when the vocal is on, the vocal seems more dry and in your face because it's pushing the reverb down, and when she stops singing, the reverb is pushed back up to the forefront of the mix to give a really cool sounding effect. There's also, on the most recent 9 Inch Nails record, 9 Inch Nails Came Back Haunted, I think is the track. What happens in this track is when Trent is singing, the lead synth, which was in the spot in the mix where his voice should be, gets pushed behind his voice, and that was really clever when I heard it. I thought that was a really clever mix move. So let me see if I can pull that up real fast. So it's this synth right here. Push in the back when he's singing. Comes forward. So there's a lot of different ways to sidechain things, and this is how you can get creative with it. So let's jump back over here. So what we're going to sidechain is we're going to take the lead here, and we're going to do that by creating a spider audio merge splitter and splitting the audio of this lead sound and throwing it into the sidechain of the mixer. So now the lead is going to be pushing the reverb down whenever it's on. And we're going to do this in a fashion that's like super extreme. So the threshold's all the way down, the ratio is all the way up, the attack is super fast, the release is super slow, and then we slam it the fuck inside. Wrong one. So you see it's getting pushed underneath the synth every time the synth is on. And that's pretty much the entire shebang in a nutshell. We glossed over a few minor details, including the bass. In the original project file, the bass is actually what sidechains the reverb, and other minor things such as that. But everything else is in there, and that's pretty much it. Super easy. Super, super easy, super, super useful. You don't have to do a lot to get sweet results. So one last time, let's ride out. Another difference between these two, which I'm not really sure about, and I haven't even tested it out, is that the above and beyond, you'll notice past 10 kilohertz here, there's a little bit of somewhat of a low shelf, a low pass kind of filter happening here. And I'm not sure if that's because this is an MP3 file that isn't full uncompressed quality, that we're getting all the extra information up here, or if I did something wrong in the reverse engineering so that it should be a little bit darker in the upper end of the spectrum. So that's mine. You see how it's bright right there? And this is that. Alright, see you guys in the